Hey folks, it's Bear Gardner, and this is another of my videos, coverage of the upcoming Covert Operations expansion. As always, I am a Kards Content Creator, avid player, relatively competent in most people's opinions, I would like to say. I stream regularly. I have many years, decades in fact, in different forms of collectible card games and in the design and method of tabletop games, and I like noodling about with rules and talking about things, and that's made some of my content relatively popular, which is great. I love it. This particular video was actually requested by more than one person. I've had more than one person come to me and ask about this. What this video is this is a video specific to the returning research orders. Now, I've already kind of covered these when I did my reviews of the card releases and rotation, but I got asked by several people whether I would do a video specifically on these research orders because, as one person said to me, even for someone who's been playing this game for a while and in the distant past actually was playing the game when these orders were around, which is before I even started playing these games, they're quite complicated, and trying to decide how to approach them is a whole thing. And I thought, fair point. And then someone else said to me, hey, orders are a bit confusing. Do you think you'd be doing a video on it? And I was like, okay. And then like two other people got in touch with me in various places and said, are you ever doing anything about these new returning orders? Because they seem like something we're going to need to know about. And so on. Cascade effect. Here's my video. This video is going to be very specific. I'm going to go through all of the orders for the three nations that have these research method orders and talk about information and ideas and my understanding of them. Now, I have not played with these outside of occasionally thinking about wandering into casual mode. Classic mode, which I've not actually bothered to do. However, I have a pretty good understanding of cards and value, which is a good place to start with these things, and I can at least try and explain these to you in a way that might make them slightly less overfacing if you're new to the game, or slightly less irritating if you're just trying to figure out how to deal with them and or use them. There are plenty of people who know more about these than me, so they may also do videos on this, and I'm sure if you look in the comments below, you'll get other opinions potentially too. And of course, you can always reach out in various Discords, including my own, and get more advice. But I'm going to keep this relatively basic. This is not designed to be a hyper-detailed guide, and it's not designed to be perfect, but it is designed to give you some idea of what we're looking at, and what might or might not be the use case for these somewhat complicated things. How do research cards work? Let's start there because it's the same for all of them. They all work the same way. They all start from a single card, which is the research card. Royal Research, Reich Research, or US Military Research. Only Britain, Germany, and the US have access to research cards at the time of recording. Each of these cards is a 3-cost order. They're all elite, by the way, and run exactly one of them. When you play the 3-cost order, you make a choice. That choice will be between an order that you can add to your hand that does something immediately, or adding another order to your hand, expanded X research, which costs 6. Then when you play that, having played a total of 9 cost, you get another choice between another, stronger order, which you can add immediately to your hand for an effect, or adding advanced X research to your hand, which is a 9-cost order. Now, at that point, the 9-cost order is where it gets different. So when we get to the 9-cost order, having paid 18 credits, we still get 2 choices, but they're not. There's no next tier. These are 2 choices of capstone orders, which have big board-changing effects, or game-altering effects. That's how these work. They are an investment. Sometimes a really big investment. In fact, 30 credits at the top end of cost investment, which is to say 9 cost in 3 orders, a 3, a 6, and a 9, and then a 12 cost capstone, or 2 6 costs in one case, for the big effect, for a total of 30 credits. So this is a big investment, which is why you probably want to understand the value of it. Which is why I'm going to try and give you some understanding of it, but in a relatively condensed way. So, right, that's how orders work. We're just going to go nation by nation, so we're going to go over to my home nation of Britain and talk about royal research. Caffeine. I'm recording my second video this morning. I'm very busy for Covert Operations. Right, royal research. This is the entry point order for British research. It is 3 cost, and, as I said, gives you an option. You can choose to either add radar to hand, or add expanded royal research to hand. So, radar, the first and cheapest payoff. So, first of all, this is a 0 cost order, which means in effect it's a 3 cost order. That is quite important because you've paid 3 for research, and understanding credit investment is quite important. This is a 3 cost order that says draw a card and your HQ gains +4 defense. This is decent. If nothing else, this is not a terrible early payoff. It is comparable to Sincerely Yours, which is a 4 cost elite order that gives your HQ 6 defense and draws 2 cards. This is 3 cost, gives your HQ 4 defense and draws a card. It fits the British theme, and there are times at which if you just need to cite. Honestly, the big thing here is if you just need to cycle the order out of your hand. If you just want to get research out of your hand and get an immediate thing, or you're under pressure and you need drawing to survive, this is not a bad way to go. It's not amazing, but it's a decent low-level payoff. It's a little overcosted at 3 for me, but it's not so overcosted that I wouldn't play it. It's good value. You're getting 4 HQ defense and you're drawing a card, which is not bad. Like, there are the equivalent 3 cost British order draws. Oh, 2 cards? Because it's Convoy? Yeah, Convoy draws 2 cards for 3 cost. This is trade one of those cards for 4 HQ defense. Yeah, I'm fine with that. It's about on par. Fortification for 3 cost gets 7 HQ defense. This is literally half and half. Rounded up. Good value. It really is good value. This is a good order. Do not sleep on the fact that this in and of itself is pretty decent. Right. Assuming that we choose not to play radar, we get expanded royal research added to our hand. This is a 6 cost order, as discussed before, and says choose one. Add synthetic rubber to hand, or add advanced royal research to hand. So, the tier 2 payoff, which has cost us 9, lest we forget, is synthetic rubber. Also really cool art. Synthetic rubber. Target unit gets +4 defense, then set its attack equal to its defense. This is very good. This can be very potent. In a nation which is known for units which have big fat defences and has access to cup of tea, which will increase defence and other effects, being able to set the defence to something silly and then match its attack to its defence, notably, possibly before you swing with it, could hand you a really good bomber finisher, for example. Even at its smallest, this can turn your 1/3 swordfish into a 7/7. Not nothing. There will be times when you look at this and go, 9 credits to finish out the game, plus the op cost of whatever bomber I'm using. Yes, please. There really will. It's worth being aware of, and is one of the reasons that it can be very worthwhile thinking about taking the 2nd tier. Anyway, we're not taking the 2nd tier, let's go to advanced royal research. So here's the big one, here's the 9 cost order, and it allows us to choose from one of 2 cards. Active Sonar or Bletchley Park. Now, before we get into these, I've talked to some people who have played these cards before and learned a bit myself about their effects, and had some education, because my initial opinions on these needed a little tweak. Active Sonar. So this effectively costs us 18 credits. This is very important to be aware of. This costs us 18 credits and is pin all enemy units, increase the cost of all cards in enemy hand by 3. This is a very potent stall tactic, but it's not earth-shattering, but it does buy you potentially 2 turns. The reason it buys you potentially 2 turns is that it pins everything, which you can presumably then act against, but then your opponent's next turn is pretty much a nightmare with all cards costing 3 or more. In specific matchups where you know your opponent is pushing to use a powerful board state that you need time to clear, or you know your opponent's holding a bunch of stuff in hand that you don't want to see, this can be very, very good. Is it world-breaking? No. Is it always going to be good? No. Is it worth 18 credits? Maybe. But when you need it, you won't be sad to have it. Whether you'll get to it on a regular basis, we'll get to in a minute. Bletchley Park. Now, I have sort of changed my opinion on this, having talked to some previous players. Transparency, my initial read of this was that I didn't like the value on this until someone pointed something very important out to me. Thank you, JKing7. This is a 12 cost order, so this is actually a 30 cost order, because we paid 19 to get it into our hand and then we're paying 12 to play it. So for 30 cost, this would have to do something pretty amazing, and actually it does. All enemy cards with cost 5 or less in all enemy cards with cost 5 or less in hand and on the battlefield are put on top of the enemy's deck. Right. 5 or less is a large number of the cards in the game. On the face of it, you would say, and I did when I first read this, though, I want to see 30 costs worth of cards going back onto the enemy's deck for this to be worth it, and I was wrong. Because what I wasn't accounting for is the number of dead draws that our opponent is then into. Because they're going on the top of the deck, they're not being discarded, which means our opponent has to redraw and replay them. Played well, this is a huge tempo change. Now, for it to be worth 30 credits and to win you the game, you have to be playing a very particular way, and you have to want that big stall at the end to finish your enemy out, and honestly, I'm pretty much of the opinion that the majority of decks for newer and more intermediate players are probably going to be more interested in synthetic rubber and radar than they are in the big payoffs, because they are probably trying to finish out the game a bit quicker. Both of these Brit endgame cards are very long game and very much about potent stall. And that means you have to play a particular way, and it's not a massively popular archetype until you get to a certain type and level of player. That's not to say, by the way, that none of you out there do that. It's no criticism of it. I, by the way, am one of the players who really likes that archetype. Slow burn control decks and tempo control and slowing the game down. I love this stuff. But it is based on my own observation and conversations, not that common. I think the majority of Brit players are probably going to plump to either get some protection out of the early payoff from radar, or are going to look to use synthetic rubber as a finisher. Personal opinion, but there you go. So, the end part of this also includes advice about what to be aware of when you're playing into Britain and you see these orders starting to be played. Well, you can see what's coming. These orders are all longevity to one side or another, with the exception of synthetic rubber, which can also, as I say, be a finisher. What you will learn is that your opponent is going to be in a position to extend the game, which means that if you are playing into and against these orders, you want to make sure that you play your cards and your tactics with that in mind. In short, you don't want to leave yourself open to board clears and then being completely dead drawing. I mean, if your opponent gets to Bletchley Park, there's not a lot you can do, because if your opponent's in the right position with Bletchley Park, it's just a win con, because they've controlled everything. Your board state, your draw, the whole thing. However, with the earlier cards are generally ones you can be aware of. In particular, I will also say, with synthetic rubber being an option, keep an eye on things like bombers and artillery, which Brett has a lot of, which could be really strong synthetic rubber targets. And if you know your opponent's played, which is one of the interesting things about these cards, you know your opponent has played into the advanced order because they've played it. So, if there is that potential, then be aware of a big health target that doesn't care about guards, hence artillery and bombers, that your opponent might be looking to bang synthetic rubber onto to finish out the game. Good piece of advice, I think, in this case. Something to look for. The actual radar, there's not a lot you can do about, just be aware that it's there. But that's not an uncommon Brit tool. HQ defense gain and draw are pretty much standard Brit things. Right, that's me on the British orders, and my little bit on potentially playing around it. Let's move on to Germany. Okay, Germany. This is Reich Research. Reich Research, like Royal Research, is a 3-cost order, and you get choose one. In this case, you can choose to either add a V1 flying bomb to hand, or add Expanded Reich Research, or Expanded Reich R&D, to hand. Right. Payoff time. The V1 flying bomb. This is, in effect, a 3-cost order that says destroy target unit with cost 3 or less. Okay, so this is kind of on par. This is not earth-shattering. There are other orders in game that do similar things. They are okay. Like, Sudden Strike is a fair comparison for this, which is a 2-cost German order that destroys a unit that costs 2 credits or less. This is 3-cost, in effect, 3 or less. Early on in the game, that can be there are a lot of decent targets for this. Do not sleep on the fact that, again, the early payoff of these, just the early versions of these orders, are relatively utilitarian. I like the V1 flying bomb. It's a good piece of early removal. You're not always going to want to use it that way, but sometimes it's going to be worth it because you're going to need it. Expanded Reich R&D. So assuming we don't go for the V1 flying bomb, we get this, and this is choose one, add synthetic oil to hand, or add advanced Reich R&D to hand. Okay, we know how this works by now. This is the tier 2. Okay, synthetic oil. So here's the payoff. Now, this has got big red box around it because we've had announced the change to this. You can ignore the red box. This is just the text that you will now see on the card, but I don't have access to a cleaner version of it. But this is the version you will see in-game. This is a 0-cost, although in effect, as I pointed out, it is 9-cost order. This 9-cost order says gain 10 additional credits and draw an extra card next turn. Now, this does fit into a fairly common part of what Germany does. This is along the lines of Reichsbank, which is a 3-cost order that gives you 5 additional credits next turn. This is pretty similar. It's giving you 10 additional credits and an extra card next turn. The extra card is the new addition to this, and it makes it considerably more desirable, because paying 9 credits now to get 10 credits next turn is a very specific investment. You have to know that you're going to get something out of it. That's not to say it was never usable as that. I have heard people tell me that it can be used and be used for some really busted turns, but it can also be a bit dead. Add the extra card draw, and you're in a really good position with this. So there are going to be times when this is a decent option to take. I don't think it's super strong, but it's decent value. It certainly gives you the option to have one big explosive turn if you feel like that's going to win the game for you. To Advanced Reich R&D, the tier 3, this is the 9-cost order, which gives us a total investment of 18, and this one is Choose one, add a Type 21 U-boat to hand, or add Urine Project to hand. Right, you know how this works. The Type 21 U-boat. 0 cost order, in effect an 18 cost order. Destroy target unit, enemy discards 2 cards. Now, initially, there are going to be people who are looking at me going, is this really worth that amount of investment? That doesn't feel like a big effect. It depends, because my god, can this be strong. When your opponent has one massive game-ending threat on the board, and it's late game, and they're looking for whatever it is that's going to get them through, like they've got a piece that could absolutely destroy you, like a fighter that could end the game, but you have a guard up and they're digging for their removal, and you go, I destroy your main threat and make you discard 2 cards, which might include the thing that you need to win the game. This can be huge. This is a very potent tool. Discarding 2 cards, given that you don't often have a million in hand, in fact the maximum you're going to have is 9, isn't small. And destroy target unit, lest we forget, this does not care what the target unit is unless it is immune to orders. So this is pretty good, and quite often, I am told, was the chosen option for its utilitarianness, for its sheer potency, because its cousin weren't that great by comparison. Right. Speaking of its cousin, this is Urine Project, and Urine Project has been changed. Urine Project is at the 12 cost, so the 30 cost payoff here, and it's big. So Urine Project is destroy all enemy units. That used to be all it did, and wasn't great, frankly, because destroy all enemy units for basically spending your entire turn is just stalling out a bit. This one now also gives you a credit for each destroyed unit, which gives you some operating capital to then do something after you've cleared the board of everything, regardless of how powerful it is and whether it cares about orders or not. Those really potent German tanks that say immune to enemy orders, they're not immune to, or rather cannot be targeted by enemy orders. This doesn't care because it's not targeting them. They're destroyed. It's a lot of money, but it can completely change the game, because this could be a massive tempo swing, because it clears the board completely of everything your opponent has without touching your own units, and then gives you credits to operate or expand your position. This is a good card played well. The old version, as I mentioned in my initial commentary on the return of this card, was not, because it was just destroy all enemy units. This is really good, and you will see this, and you need to be aware of it. Speaking of which, now we get to what to be aware of when seeing a German opponent playing these orders. Well, the ouch factor. These cards are basically ouch factor, in one way or another. They are removal, destruction, or in the case of synthetic oil, telegraphing a turn, which honestly, even because they are telegraphing it, you know it's coming, but good luck being able to do anything about it. That's an awful lot of credits. That's a lot of extra credits. Given that they've had a minimum of 6 credits to spend on that turn, that means they will have, like, with that, they'll have at least 16 credits to operate next turn and an extra card. That's a lot to eat. Overall, what these are big tempo swing cards, either in the form of removal to get rid of threats, board clear, or, as I say, one big swinging turn. That would be my advice if you see German players playing these orders, is be aware, and also be very aware if you see them playing all the way through to it, that something like Urine Project can destroy the best laid plans in the world late game. This can turn the most winning position into nothing. Something to be aware of. overall, that's the theme of Germany, and that should be what's foremost in your mind playing against German orders. Early removal, or really potent light removal, deadly board clear, and of course, as I say, the one that you can kind of relax a little bit more about is synthetic oil, because it does telegraph. You know it's coming, and you can just spend the next turn doing the very best you can to minimise the damage that they're going to be able to do with their extra card and 16 credits. Which is the downside of it being telegraphed. So that's Germany, and my opinions on them. To the United States and US military research. We know the drill by now, so US military research, the basic card is 3 cost, and choose one. Add depth charges to hand, or add expanded US research to hand. We know the drill. Depth charges. Depth charges, 0 cost order, in effect 3 cost. I will continue to say this because I think it's a useful reminder. Gain an extra credit slot, your HQ gains smokescreen until your next turn. This is very good, for a number of reasons that may not be that apparent. This is comparable to the War Machine. That's obviously where we're going to go with this, because the War Machine is 2 cost, gain an extra credit slot. This gets you the same credit slot and gives your HQ smokescreen. Now, smokescreen means that your HQ can't be targeted. That's not small. Like, obviously they can target it with orders, but protecting your HQ for a turn, buying yourself a turn, and then having an extra credit next turn can be good. This is not a bad use of 3 credits. It's probably not what you're hoping for from this particular set of research, because odds are you have a very specific intent for this set of research. Spoilers, it will become apparent later, but you probably do. But there are times at which this could be really good, and game-saving. Especially against early pressure. Low aggro decks. Right. Expanded US research. This one allows you to choose one. Add pressurized cabin to hand or advanced US research to hand. Pressurized cabin, again, red text box, because it's been changed. So my original review of this when it was rotating back in is not useless, but very different now, because the change in this one in particular I really like. Anyway, this is pressurized cabin and has awesome art. And this is a 0 cost, although in effect 9 cost order. Add a B-29 Super Fortress to hand, destroy a random enemy unit. Right, so let's get the B-29, let's get the elephant in the room out of the way. The B-29 is one of the most polarizing big cards for me in the entire game because it asks so much of you. It is the 15 cost, although you can reduce that by 3, so you can get it down to 12 if you control the front line. 9/9 heavy armor blitz bomber with an op cost of 4. Right. So that means even if you've ticked all of the boxes for that card, you still need 16 credits to deploy it and swing for 9. However, it does have heavy armor 2 and 9 defense, so it's going to be around for a while. If you could get a B-29 out, it's probably game winning, although removal is a problem. But this was initially, as you will see if you go watch the other video, a thing. You could get the B-29 Super Fortress and you also added another order to hand, which also cost you 8, and destroyed 2 enemy units. That wasn't the border's high altitude bombing, by the way. I'm trying to remember the name. You added a B-29 and high altitude bombing to your hand. The problem with this is that high altitude bombing also costs 8, which means that you're effectively paying 17 to destroy 2 random enemy units, and you probably can't play it as fast as you want to. This is much better. This is 9 cost, destroy a random enemy unit, get a free B29 for later. This is much better than it was, and it might see play in ramp decks that want that B29 for later. Again, it probably won't, because most people who are playing this research card are probably aiming in one very specific direction, as we will see when we roll on to the final tier. Right. Advanced US Research. Advanced US Research, the 9-cost version, so this is where we're 18 deep into this orders tree. Choose one, add Penicillin to hand, or add 2 Manhattan Project to hand. Right, okay, here we go. Penicillin, I'm going to get this one out the way, because it's probably not going to see that much play, which is a shame, because I don't mind this card. Penicillin is a 0-cost order. It's in effect an 18-cost order, as I've pointed out. Your units in HQ gain 6 defense and you draw 4 cards. That is really good value for 18 staged credit. It really is. This is not a weak order. Unfortunately for it, it lives in the same space as one of the most iconic images of World War II. The Manhattan Project. This is... you get 2 of these, to be clear. This is a 6-cost order. Deal 6 damage to all enemies. This is immense. This is 30 cost. Deal 12 damage to all enemies. Which, if that were the case, would be slightly less good, actually, because 12 damage is a lot, and there's going to be a lot of overkill. But you get this twice. Very apropos, by the way, developers. Maybe a little on the nose, but yeah, why not? You know, we are going with the theme here, and if you want the theme of being able to drop nukes, this is the deal. 6 damage to all enemies twice. Also note 6 damage to all enemies. So if nothing else, this is 12 damage to your enemy HQ. Not nothing. This is almost certainly what the vast majority of players playing this order set are going for, because this is probably the cleanest looking straight up win condition of the orders sets for research. Which leads me to my summary of the US and what to do when you see people playing this, and the answer is pretty simple. Be aware of everything else, but let's be honest, prepare for nukes. Know that they are almost certainly going to ramp, play these orders out, and look to nuke you into oblivion. And if you can't find a way around it, it's probably going to work, because this thing hits really hard. This is very strong. It's a lot of investment to get to. However, I will say, this is much easier to pull off, in some ways, than the other Tier 3 orders, because each of the Manhattan projects only costs 6. Granted, the first one, if you want to play it on curve, costs you substantially more, because you've got to pay 15 in total, because you've got to pay 9 for the order and then this. But then this is the US. Lest us forget that the US having 15 credits on a turn is not actually that difficult. So if you see your opponent ramping to 15 credits, and have seen them go into the orders, be aware that you might just get nuked in the face with no warning. The second one you'll know is coming, if that makes you feel any better. But the first one you won't, because there's nothing you can do about it. This will see play in US ramp decks. This will see play in a lot of US ramp decks. This will be the archetypical win condition for a lot of US ramp decks, I have no doubt, because there's just something really attractive. And also, by the way, the animation, which I have seen, is really cool. They might have changed it, but the old animation for this was pretty cool too. On the whole, that's my best advice with this. The other orders are not bad, and you might see them used occasionally, but the honest truth is, if you see a US ramp deck playing this, it is probably rolling for Manhattan Project. And you really need to win the game before they get near it. Best advice. Or have a countermeasure that can turn it off. You're Ultra, and you're Britain. Hang on to it. And save your life, literally. Or at least your game. Anyway, that's the US and my advice on the US versions of the orders. Wrapping up time. First of all, I hope it's been useful. It's not perfect, but it gives you an idea. Secondly, it's been fun to do. I am personally quite happy to see these back in the game. I think they're really interesting. I would also love to see similar things for the two nations that don't have them. However, they are really intriguing to me. And as I say, I think we're going to see them in play. Obviously we are. They're interesting toys, and everyone likes to play with an interesting toy. I hope this video will be useful to those of you who want to be prepared for how to deal with these and how to use these. As always, if you have questions, comments, opinions, all of that stuff, down below. You can find me all over the place. Join my Discord, comment here, private message me. Most of my private messaging and all the social media is also open. That's it, really. I don't have a lot more on this one, because that's what this was about. Just my opinions and thoughts on what to do with these shiny new researches, or at least shiny old researches that have been polished up and put back out, with some really interesting changes. Anywho, as always, be well, stay safe, be good human beings, and I will catch you next time.